Hank looked at the face. It was like the man's eyes had been taken out, and the eyes he had now had once belonged to something else. They were like eyes Hank had seen before, down by the river, when the still water would ripple with the head of a water moccasin, and all he could see would be eyes bobbing and rippling through the stagnant water. To Hank, it seemed that the moccasin had crawled in through one of the empty sockets of the man's face and coiled up inside his head, and was now trying to look back out through the holes, only its eyes were smaller and didn't fit. Hello, it's Alex and welcome to Hey Little Drifter. Today I'm going to be giving a book review of Deliver Us from Evil by Alan Lee Harris. This was originally published in 1988, and this edition is a more recent reissue from Capricorn Literary. And I'm going to say up front, this book is an absolute hidden gem. I think this book should be way more well known than it is. Currently on Goodreads, this book only has 82 ratings and 19 reviews, one of which is mine. So yeah, criminally underrated, and I wanted to talk about it here and hopefully encourage other people to pick it up too. This book is getting somewhat heavy already, so I'm actually going to put the book down for once, and I will replace it with the original paperback cover as well, which is pretty snazzy. So, Deliver Us from Evil is set in a small town called Lucerne in Georgia, and at the beginning of the novel there is a scene taking place of a young boy witnessing something awful happening to a young girl, and it is taking place in the local woods at something called the Snake Well. And that in itself is terrifying and well worth reading the book for that alone, I would say. But yeah, back to the story. So, what has happened is a young girl has gone missing, and the town are looking for her, but she hasn't turned up. They don't yet know what could have happened to her. And some days later, the local sheriff, Charlie, and the local doctor are continuing the search, and they end up finding her in this abandoned mansion in the local area, and she is still alive but near death. She had been kidnapped and had clearly been abused, and she has been left with tattoos covering her entire body. The girl manages to hang on for some time, but unfortunately does pass away, and this affects the parents of the girl drastically. The young girl is actually the daughter of the local reverend, and this adds another layer to the whole thing, in that a lot of the townsfolk are religious and they can't really understand how something so awful could happen to this innocent young girl, and is just the kind of thing that has never happened in this small town before, so it has a huge effect on everyone that lives there and is like a kind of a black cloud that will remain over the town. The story then picks up 14 years later, and one of the main characters is the sheriff, Charlie. So at the beginning of the story, he is married and they had a baby boy called Larry. So now in the present day, Charlie and his wife are still married, and their son Larry is a teenager. And Larry is also another of the main characters here. There is another teenage boy who arrives in the town. He is an orphan and has seemingly recently been taken in by a local lady, and the other people in the town think it's a bit weird because she is kind of this crotchety, antagonistic woman who doesn't seem like the kind of person who would be, you know, taking in some poor orphan child just, you know, out of the kindness of her own heart. So things there are somewhat secretive, and what people have seen of this young boy are that he is somewhat strange. His name is Jamie, and of course we do find out more about his history and the reason why he's here as the story goes on, which I won't go into. But he and Larry end up forming a friendship, kind of begrudgingly at first, because Larry's friends have started to bully Jamie because, yeah, they think he's a bit odd, and Larry's father, the sheriff, is kind of pushing Larry to do the right thing and be friendly to Jamie. So yeah, while begrudgingly at first, the two of them do form a friendship, and that actually ended up being like one of my favourite aspects of the book. I thought it was really well done and might have got a bit emotional at some point. So there are some strange events that start to occur within the town that may or may not be related to what happened 14 years ago. And the Sheriff Charlie is trying to investigate what's happening. There are quite a lot of layers to this story. It is somewhat complex, there's a lot of backstory, there are quite a number of characters, and yeah, I thought it was excellently done in the way the story was told, but it does make it a little difficult to try and explain it in a concise way and avoid any big spoilers. So yeah, hopefully I will give enough here to pique your interest, but without going too far and spoiling anything for you. So one of the big elements in the story is religion. A lot of these characters are religious, and the story does have a big element regarding that. And I'm an atheist, so this kind of thing, you know, partway through I was worried that it was going to become preachy in some way, but thankfully it did not. At least I didn't think so. I think it incorporated religion and religious belief into the story in such a way that it was compelling and interesting and believable. Another big element of this novel that I absolutely loved was the creepiness. And boy, is there some creepiness in this novel. There were multiple times throughout this book that genuinely creeped me out, and that honestly doesn't happen too often. Even though I read a lot of horror, it isn't often that I will read something that, you know, gets under my skin and makes me kind of take a look around and worry that there's something out there, but this book did that. In fact, there were a couple of separate moments when I was so engrossed in what I was reading and so like tense about it that a sudden noise, you know, just in the house or whatever, would then make me jump because I was like so on edge. And I really want to discuss those elements a bit more, but they are spoilery, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. But a lot of them involve a character who was a part of what happened 14 years ago, and there are also a lot of snakes involved, so if they creep you out, then this might freak you out. They don't particularly creep me out, but they did in this novel. There is a really great cast of characters. So we have Charlie, the sheriff, and his wife. There is the local doctor. There is the Reverend and his wife, whose lives have really been shattered by the loss of their daughter. There is the lady who has taken young Jamie in, and there are a couple of elderly ladies who are known as like the local gossips. There is also a black lady who is referred to at times who used to live in the area And yeah, she was known as someone who had some kind of ability to see things that other people can't. So we have this small town with a dark past, and we have these interesting characters, some of whom might have some dark secrets. We also have a big religious element to the story, and something evil that has come to this small town. I really enjoyed this one. It was such a nice surprise because, you know, I always go into every book hoping it will be good, if not great, but yeah, this one really hit the spot for me. I rated it 4 stars out of 5, and it's one that I definitely recommend checking out. I really enjoyed his writing style. The story itself was very compelling. I thought the characters were all really well written, and yeah, there was just this dark, unsettling feel to the whole story, and I just couldn't stop turning the pages. His details were really evocative, and yeah, could just really feel the atmosphere and the creepiness, as I've mentioned. And yeah, the whole setting and the characters, yeah, I just thought it was all really well written, and the story was a really unique story. There, like I said, it's quite layered, so there are a lot of really interesting elements here. It didn't feel, you know, complicated while you're reading it, but there is quite a lot going on. And this book is not only creepy, but it also gets pretty dark. There are some dark, unsettling, disturbing things that happen here. I thought it was all really well written, and it made for just such a great reading experience. A couple of other things I just wanted to make mention of. There is a racist character or two in this book, and they do mention the N-word a couple of times. There are also a couple of characters who may or may not have like some kind of learning difficulties, and some characters refer to them with the R word. So I just wanted to mention that. I thought it felt authentic for these characters and this setting for those kind of slurs to be said, so it didn't like take me out of the book in that respect, but yeah, still very awkward to read, so I did want to mention that here. And another thing, I was very kindly sent a copy of this book from Capricorn Literary, who have reissued it. I think it came out last year. And unfortunately, the reprint has quite a lot of typos. There were a lot of words where it was just, you know, one letter was the wrong letter, and there were quite a lot of, you know, quotation marks missing, things like that. It wasn't difficult to figure out, you know, what these words should have been, and it didn't necessarily spoil my enjoyment of the book, but it was quite annoying at times, and to have so many of them throughout the book was pretty disappointing. So I did want to mention that here, but yeah, I do really appreciate the fact that there are publishers like Capricorn Literary who are reprinting these older titles because they're out of print, so it's great that they are making them more accessible. I believe there is also an ebook version as well as the paperback version, but yeah, unfortunately just be aware that there are a number of typos throughout. Saying that, I have read another of the books that they have reissued, and I don't recall there being that issue, so this might just be an unfortunate one-off. So those were my thoughts on Deliver Us from Evil by Alan Lee Harris. Such a great read, like I'm just so excited to talk about it here. It was just, yeah, a really great reading experience, and definitely one that I recommend more people check out. I believe he only has one other horror novel that also came out in the 80s called Let There Be Dark, So I definitely want to give that one a read as well after really enjoying this one. Yeah, I would definitely put this one in a hidden gem category because I think it's one that has sadly been somewhat overlooked and somewhat forgotten over the years, and yeah, hopefully this review can introduce a few more people to it. And please do let me know if you check it out. I would love to hear your thoughts. If you've already read it, I would love to hear your thoughts. So thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Bye!